Welcome to an unscheduled episode of The Modern Moron. I thought that instead of delivering a regular episode days late, I would put one out ahead of time. What a concept. I never, ever thought in a million years I would be talking so much about politics. It's crazy. I never gave a rat's ass about politics, but now I find myself researching and talking about it a lot, not so much because I have a political opinion or a party affiliation, but I guess from an anthropological perspective and the behavioral science between the way us rats are reacting to each other in this cage. It's insane and pretty interesting, actually, if you can stay detached long enough to observe it. Boy, a lot of stuff has gone down this week. The two most prominent events are the State of the Union address by the president heading into the presidential election and the Senate's impeachment vote. Okay, State of the Union on Tuesday. According to The Hill, skews to the right, but not as much as, say, Fox News, so not that bad. They stated that viewership for the address on television dropped by 20%, except for Fox News, ironically. So that really shouldn't be a surprise. But if you did not watch because you can't stand Trump, you did yourself a favor, because he basically used this forum as a formal kickoff for his 2020 re-election campaign. Republicans were whooping and hollering in support and approval in standing ovation after ovation, making me think this is kind of odd behavior for a political party that very reluctantly took him in as their candidate. But there they were, yelling approval for him as he touted victory after victory in different areas, from our economy to preferential financial assistance to black universities and colleges. Since when has he been speaking about that? That came out of nowhere. To keeping Social Security safe and, thank goodness, protecting us from socialism, especially socialist health care.
First of all, let me tell you this.
Did I mention that several times he looked exactly like Benito Mussolini? I think I've mentioned that before. A scary resemblance. There was also some entertainment in watching Nancy Pelosi sit behind Trump and try to sit still. She couldn't do it.
Don't mess with me.
She was just beside herself, looking at papers in front of her that turned out to be Trump's printed speech. As I'm sure you know by now, that after the speech, she stood up and tore the speech in half. Between that and Trump not shaking her hand before the speech, there are your two top elected officials not getting along. And it's easy for Republicans to call the Democrats petty because, I mean, after all, they're kind of winning right now, whether you like it or not. So
Who's stupid now, huh?
it's easy to call the other guys being petty. So in the president's State of the Union address, he stated that things are about as good as they've ever been, especially the economy. And he has some statistics to go along with it. And then in his traditional, I can do whatever the I want style, he stopped the whole show, and it was a show, to give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to conservative radio talk show host and shock jock Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. Here is some of the wonderful, provocative stuff that Rush has said over the years to earn him the Medal of Freedom. This is courtesy of a CNN report, which the link will be included below.
Steinbrenner has passed away at age 80. That cracker made a lot of African-American millionaires.
In 2011, Limbaugh decided to mock the Chinese president during his visit to the United States.
Hu Jintao was just going ching-chang, 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 ching-ba-ba-ba.
When actor Michael J. Fox, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, did this ad for a Democratic candidate who supported stem cell research, Limbaugh pounced.
This is Michael J. Fox. He's got Parkinson's disease. And it's, in this commercial, he is exaggerating the effects of the disease. He is moving all around and shaking, and it's purely an act.
After outrage over his comments, Limbaugh apologized the next day, saying, "I will hugely admit that I was wrong." In 2012, when a Georgetown law student spoke to House Democrats to support mandating insurance companies cover contraceptives, Limbaugh called her a slut and a prostitute, and then this.
So, Ms. Fluke, and the rest of you feminazis, here's the deal. If we are going to pay for your contraceptives and thus pay for you to have sex, we want something for it. And I'll tell you what it is. We want you to post the videos online so we can all watch.
He later apologized for that, too. But he reserved a great deal of his racist comments for one man, Barack Obama, both as president and as a candidate. In 2007, as Obama campaigned on hope and change, Limbaugh debuted a racist parody of Puff the Magic Dragon, sung by a candidate for chairman of the Republican National Committee.
Barack the Magic Negro.
Then Limbaugh defended his decision to air it.
Every one of you out there that think you've got something here on Barack the Magic Negro, I'm going to try to help you and save you.
And there is your latest recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Congratulations, Rush, and good health to you, sir. The Republican Party has let Donald Trump off the hook, except for Mitt Romney. Totally partisan all the way, except for Mitt. We need more Mitt Romneys. And by that, I mean politicians who will police their own party as much, if not more, than they point their fingers across the aisle. You may not like Mitt Romney because of his party affiliation, but he's gained a lot of respect by simply holding his own party accountable. I'm going to play a snippet for you from one of the greatest professors of our time, from one of the world's finest institutions. And the institution I'm talking about is Hogwarts. Yes, that's right, Hogwarts. And the professor is
Albus Dumbledore.
You may say I'm a moron for bringing Harry Potter into politics, but I have to watch this movie damn near every night or my daughter won't go to sleep, so I know the movie backwards and forwards. But at the end of the movie, if you remember, Dumbledore gives a speech where he awards a few extra points that eventually change the House Cup from going to Slytherin.
I made one big mistake.
And instead goes to Gryffindor. He awards Harry's extra points along with Hermione and Ron for all the good deeds they did at the end, which brings it to a tie between Slytherin and Gryffindor. And then he makes one final award.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends. I award 10 points to Neville Longbottom.
Now, come on. You gotta admit, that's a tearjerker moment for old Neville Longbottom, right? The pudgy, nerdy kid who's so unassuming and he wins. I mean, come on. That always gets me. By the way, the actor who played Neville turned out to be a tall, slender, and very model-like handsome guy, in case you didn't know that. I digress, of course, and I realize that in this scenario, if Mitt Romney is Neville Longbottom, that makes Trump Harry Potter.
I brought back the old light bulb.
Yeah, I guess it does. No one wants that. Come on. So anyway, the impeachment non-trial trial is over, which is the other part. But don't you know the investigations are far from over? There's going to be more and more and more investigations. I want to play you a clip from attorney Joseph Moreno. Who the hell is he? He's a former Justice Department national security prosecutor who is now in the private sector defending the people he was prosecuting. He chimed in on this CBS News piece on the end of the impeachment trial. It's very interesting.
If the vote goes the way we think it will, which is largely or entirely on party lines, it's hard to conclude anything but the fact that the impeachment power has been largely minimized, right? And it starts with the Bill Clinton impeachment 20 years ago and continues to today. I mean, the power of impeachment, either as a threat or an actual mechanism to rein in an out-of-control president, has been largely watered down. And I think both parties bear some blame for that. I mean, Democrats for the longest time said you don't bring an impeachment unless it has broad bipartisan support. And yet the Democrats did just the opposite, where they brought a completely partisan case. That's not to say it wasn't a righteous case, but they knew getting into this, they only had Democrat support and they had a very high bar to prove the guilt in the Senate. At the same time, Republicans did themselves no favors by having a trial that wasn't a real trial, and by having 10 days of evidence and then saying, sorry, we're not interested in hearing anything else, even though we know there's more out there. People kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, what was the point of this whole thing? You should have just dismissed these charges. But by having a trial, calling it a trial, and then not actually looking at evidence, took a step back there as well. So I think the conclusion here is, unfortunately, as a check and balance, impeachment has been largely minimized now to the point where some people think it's almost impossible to use it as a tool to remove an out-of-control president.
I have a link to the entire CBS News impeachment trial summary that included him, and it's worth taking a look at. So you might be upset with our president. and you're pissed off at him. Or you might be enraged at Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff for the fiasco of impeaching a president, trying to anyway, when they had to know full well that it would not go through, wouldn't go through Congress, and that ultimately they were wasting their time and therefore our tax dollars. This isn't over. As I said, there's more investigations to go on and on and on. Lindsey Graham in the Senate still wants to go after the Bidens. Not that Joe Biden doesn't deserve it.
What you going to do about it?
And the House committee chairman is still going to investigate other alleged wrongdoings by the president. Not that he doesn't deserve it.
I made one big mistake.
They're all acting like self-righteous police investigators, but who's policing the police? And as my father would say, how is any of this contributing 1 cent to the gross national product of this country? He would say that a lot.
Calm down, Boomer.
And the answer is zero. The only ones who win in litigations are the litigators, which is why there are so many jokes about slimy, sleazy attorneys. Yes, that's right. I said it. Attorneys out there, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to hear a scathing, nasty joke about attorneys, you know where you go to get one? You ask an attorney. They love them and they know them all. All right. Okay, let's go to something that was said earlier in the CBS report. Executive privilege and impeachment. That's what it comes down to. This impeachment didn't go through, just like the Clinton impeachment didn't go through. But this one has to do with executive privilege and how much you can exercise.
There's no doubt that the president has effectively been rewarded for not cooperating with this impeachment. And that's not a great lesson to take away, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, right? I mean, the president invoked broad concepts of immunity, basically saying no one from the executive branch will I allow to testify and cooperate in this impeachment. Now, some did anyway, but that was at their own decision. So I think if there's a takeaway here, it's that we come out of this really needing some more clarity on what exactly executive privilege is and how far it should go, especially in the context of a congressional investigation or an impeachment. Should it go to the courts? Should the Senate decide? Does it cover just the president and his immediate advisors or everyone in the executive branch? I mean, if you're interested in transparency and good government, we really should figure out a way to better define executive privilege so it cannot be abused in the future by this or any other president.
He thinks he can do whatever he wants, whether it's to use tax dollars to conduct an investigation against one of his opponents or to give the Medal of Freedom to a right-wing shock jock in the middle of the union address. Think of how much of our elected officials have spent their time on this, not on passing bills, but investigating each other. I'm wondering if we should have a separate branch of government just so those idiots can investigate each other. I bet it already exists as I'm saying this because this is the modern moron. All of them seem to be dishonest to some degree, and they all seem to be catering not to the voters at large, but to their biggest campaign donors. They tell you in their speeches that they're representing individuals, but they're just really good actors who are acting on behalf of the organizations that give them the most money. And then they craft their message to disguise that fact and make you think they're voting on your behalf. Yuck. All right. So part 2 of this episode, I would like to focus on a couple of other words, and I'm going to sound really f***ing pompous. Not impeachment, not politics, but equanimity and homeostasis. Ugh, I feel a little bit gross saying it, but check out this definition of homeostasis.
Homeostasis, any self-regulating process by which biological systems tend to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are optimal for survival. If homeostasis is successful, life continues. If unsuccessful, disaster or death ensues. The stability attained is actually a dynamic equilibrium, in which continuous change occurs yet relatively uniform conditions prevail.
Okay, so that's one of my assistants. You can go back in the closet. I'll get you out around bedtime. Okay.
See you in bed, my darling.
So,
you cheeky monkey. I'm going to ride you like a crazy woman.
Whoa, easy. I appreciate the enthusiasm, and I will see you shortly. What were we talking about? Homeostasis. Think about that, not biologically necessarily, but just think about you. I want you to be calm and collected as much of the day as possible. If I can't be, why can't you be? A self-regulating process. How do you self-regulate yourself when all this information is coming into your brain throughout the day that is driving you crazy? You can't just not watch the news. It's a self-regulating process which biological systems, like your nervous system, tend to maintain stability. How do you deal with it? Adjusting to conditions that are optimal for survival. How do you maintain your sanity? If homeostasis is successful, life continues. If unsuccessful, disaster or death ensues, or insanity in this case. The stability attained is actually a dynamic equilibrium. Think about that for your state of mind. I think we can agree, can we, that the nation is generally super divided right now. Maybe it always has been. Our current president evokes a lot of emotions. He taps into the emotion of us, for better or for worse. So how do you, yes, you, not the whole audience, just you, how do you and I detach from all that discord without burying our heads in the sand? A lot of people have just stopped watching the news altogether. Isn't that kind of like burying your head in the sand? I mean, that can work to an extent, but that is a version of denial, and it's not realistic. Which gets to the subject of blame. The blame game creates a hostile outlook. Grievance, blame, life is unfair stories. They lead to a downward spiraling treadmill of discontent with all things. So I'm going to bring in another word, and that word is forgiveness. Again, I sound like a pompous ass. Think, if you're a Democrat, or if you are definitely not a Trump supporter, think of the possibility. What would it be like? Don't do it. You keep that big bag of resentments right next to you. But what would it be like? What would it feel like if you forgave Donald Trump? Just let it go and accepted him as your president. What would that feel like? And when we talk about forgiving someone, I'm not thinking in the terms of you are giving them something. You're forgiving them to give yourself something. Does that make sense? You do it not because you think Trump wins. Don't do it begrudgingly. Do it for your own well-being. If you happen to be a religious person, you do it because the icon or icons of your religion would want you to forgive with a loving heart. Yes, I just said forgive with a loving heart, okay?
Are you sure you want to say that?
Let me add a sound effect in there to make it more realistic for this program. But you know what I mean. Forgiveness, and I'm going to give you a resource for this. Forgiveness is like a changing the story, changing your self-story by forgiving Trump, forgiving the person that just cut in front of you on the freeway, the one that's tailgating you, the person that just got in the 10 items or less express lane with 15 items, all of that. Forgiving them in that moment changes the story. It changes you from the role of a victim to the role of simply being free. It changes you to the role of just an observer. It changes your story. Not Donald Trump's story, not Adam Schiff's story or a political party story. It's your story. God, I sound condescending here. I wish I could take my own medicine. It's your story, and you can make your story more peaceful, more pleasant. I know I need a load of this type of stuff just to keep the crazy people in my head from running the cuckoo's nest. We're all us boomers. Do you remember the driver's education films like Red Asphalt and there are other, I think they were called road splatter films? They were intended to scare us straight, scare us, and be careful on the highways. Why do I bring this craziness up?
Creepy.
Here's why, and I can't find the goddamn source, so you're going to have to just trust me. An experiment was conducted with subjects who were shown disturbing images, such as those found in the film Red Asphalt, other disturbing images like that. And then another group were shown the same images after a period of guided meditations and loving kindness meditations. So not surprisingly, the second group was able to view the disturbing images with a more detached and calm state, in a more detached, calm state than the group that did not. Okay, that shouldn't come as a lot of surprise for you. So, what's my point? Good question. Imagine that you have a visceral reaction to Trump, Pelosi, Washington, D.C., anything that's disturbing to you, that make your heart race, makes your blood pressure go up. The meditation and the forgiveness, specifically, that if you don't practice meditation, anybody can practice forgiveness. It's a tool. Think of it as a tool that can help you free yourself from those toxic emotions. And it doesn't have to be as grandiose as politics. As I said, it could be on the freeway, in traffic. It could be in the grocery store. It could be, how about this? How about the entitled attitude of your kids when they expect a nightly dinner menu rather than graciously thanking you for whatever you prepared?
Good one.
Those stories exist everywhere for all of us. And it behooves you, it behooves you to find some tools to let that shit go. Don't do it for the person you're forgiving. Do it for you. Not because you think someone else will win. You're losing. I'm losing by doing it, by carrying that shit around. And I carry a lot of that shit around. I don't know about you. Now, I've got a couple of people who have messages that I think could be of value to you. One of them I have mentioned before. His name is Ram Dass, formerly Richard Alpert. He was a Harvard professor. He hooked up with Timothy Leary. I don't know if that name is familiar to you. They got into doing experimenting with LSD. That's all coming back now, especially for soldiers experiencing PTSD, and how microdosing hallucinogenics like LSD and I guess magic mushrooms can really help them with that. So if you go on YouTube or Google Ram Dass, you'll find lots of talks on things that will help you do that. Another person that I've stumbled onto recently is Dr. Fred Luskin. He is a professor at Stanford University. He teaches a program in forgiveness specifically. He teaches it to Stanford students. And I'm going to play a little clip for you from him.
There are two ways that I have defined forgiveness. The simplest is to simply say that no matter what has happened in any of our lives, at this moment we can be at peace. That forgiveness is the experience of being at peace right now, no matter what story, no matter what drama, no matter what has occurred 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago. And so I refer to forgiveness as an assertive, a creation of peace in the present. The second aspect of it, that's the most simple and that's the easiest for people to grasp. That the second part of it is that we are the ones who created the lack of peace. So we're the only ones who can remedy that situation. That life happened and then we objected to life. And it was our objecting to our own life, saying, no, this is not the way this life should have been. It should have been that way. Our objecting to our own life causes emotional and physical and spiritual turmoil. Forgiveness is the resolution of our objection.
So one of the things he says is that forgiveness is an assertive creation of peace in the present. It creates it for you, not the person you're forgiving. The person you're forgiving, or the place you're forgiving, the situation you're forgiving, they probably don't even know the resentment you're carrying. It's for you. Forgiveness is an assertive creation of peace in the present. So from this reference, forgiveness is something you do for yourself, as opposed to doing it for someone else by saying, I forgive you. I hope something in there helps you. I have a guest coming up next week. I'm going to revisit. I'm going to call the episode, The Old Man and the Sea. The letter C, and the C stands for college student. My visit with my college student, who is the daughter of the senator. The senator doesn't know, and he probably won't even listen he doesn't listen to anything unless I tell him he's been mentioned in an episode or if he's in the episode. So we're going to check in with the college student, find out about, we had a little discussion about tattoos And then I had a discussion with her father about tattoos, and there was a little, they were not on the same page, let's say. So we're going to find out about that. I want to ask her also about the halftime show at the Super Bowl. I had it on, but I wasn't watching it, but there was a couple of things I was not real happy with it. Shakira and J-Lo, I think they were the two performers, doing a lot of grinding and pumping and humping that I don't think sets a very good example for women in the equality movement. Especially, you got Harvey Weinstein and his walker getting into court, and hopefully he will be spending a lot of time in prison. Maybe having done to him what he did to a number of women. But I just don't think that sends a very good message. And I want to find out what she thinks about that. Oh, so have yourself a good weekend, day, evening, wherever you tuned in. I just thank you for doing so. And we'll see you next time on The Modern Moron.
It really has nothing to do with life or the people in it, because life just happens in all of its myriad of experiences and arisings, and we object to part of it. So forgiveness is, in that context, again, it's making peace when you didn't get what you want.